Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. I'm just going to let you know this episode has a trigger warning to you on it. Basically, it does contain topics of child abuse and sexual abuse. So, if this is not what you want to listen to, if you will find this triggering or hurtful in any way, please skip this episode of the Day In, Day Out podcast and come back another time. I do hope you have a great day, whatever you choose to do. And look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye bye.
I almost killed myself. I had to go through the same thing with my sisters, and I didn't know what to do about it. I I just keep quiet, and I don't know what to do. It is such a struggle for me knowing that my sisters were abused, and I cannot talk. I can't talk to anyone. There's nothing. I just have to hold it in.
Here we go. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 340, I am very lucky, privileged to have Keeper Catran-Whitney on the podcast today. He is the owner of Nexus Worldwide Media Group, LLC, to say the least. He's here to talk about many of the trials and tribulations we face on a day-to-day basis, where, how can I put it? Where dark secrets can come out. How are you today, sir?
I am outstanding, Miwa. I am great. Did you say
You,
episode 340?
yes, 340
Congratulations,
and
man.
going strong.
Congratulations. That is
Oh, thank
out.
you. Yes, like, you know what? It's one of those things. It's giving me the opportunity to meet like people like yourself.
Mhm.
I have to say now, you, sir. How could I say? Like, you are, to say a chameleon, like chameleon. No, you have done many a thing in your lifetime to get you to where you are today. Like, I have to ask before we get into it deeply. What is what is Nexus Worldwide Media, first and foremost?
Nexus Worldwide Media Group is a media group that looks to provide information and communication to our audience. We look at film. We look to produce music. We look to produce all sorts of media. And that's really the thrust of Nexus Worldwide Media Group. It is a growing business that I'm happy to say. So that's it's a media group. I'm not often asked that
No,
very
no,
often.
no, because like this is the thing. The reason why I ask this is because, like, yeah, I just want to get an idea of who you are today, because like where you had to go from, like to get here. Yeah, like there was trials and tribulations along the way, uh, and like
Oh,
things to
where I
bear,
had
to say the least.
where I came from to where I'm at right now, which is my main thing. I'm the author of the book Helplessness, which is the emotional impact that brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. That is what I focus on now, child sexual abuse. And writing the book Helplessness is book one of a three-book series from helplessness to hopefulness to happiness. It is quite challenging in how I got from where I was to where I am right now is quite the story. So I don't know where you want to go with this, Miwa, but I will take your lead and start to answer and give you whatever it is that you want.
So Can you tell me what life was like before, like you found out the truth?
Sure, sure. I will give you the condensed version. In 1977, my family, we were pretty popular entertainers here in Los Angeles. I was about 16 years old. Uh, and so we were very, very popular. And we were with United Artists Records at the time. In that year, we had done so many spectacular things. I grew up very, very poor. In fact, I lived in abject poverty. I lived in 21 different places before I moved out. We were homeless 3 times, no place to go. We just struggled. I went to 11 grade school before I graduated high school. I was a chronic stutterer at the time. Still have my challenges with it. So life was incredibly difficult for me and my family, which consisted of 4 boys, 4 girls, my mother and stepfather. And yet we were able to use music uh, as a way of getting us out. And so in 1977, we had made the coveted Billboard magazine's top 103 times. We were doing concerts. We were doing TV shows. We were in all the magazines, TV, Right On magazine. We were just everywhere. In 1977 was also the year Motown Records had completed their exhaustive 3-year search to replace Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5. They had been looking for the group to replace them. And lo and behold, they settled on my thing. We were about to replace Michael Jackson and Jackson 5. Now, here's an irony of that. In 1971, when we had just started singing and working at after-hour nightclubs, since obviously kids, it was after-hours nightclubs, singing and performing 3 nights a week. School rehearse, that's all we did. One Saturday afternoon, the phone rang, and my mother answers the phone. Hello. She then points to the phone and says, Michael Jackson's on the phone. That Michael Jackson. She then looks at the brother directly underneath me. I am number 2 in the pecking order. So she looks at the brother directly underneath me, who's number 4, and she says, he wants to talk to you. So my brother goes to the phone, says, hello. A couple of minutes later, he hangs it up and he screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of us, said he's heard of me, said I sing and dance just like him. For us to keep going, do not stop. You will get there someday. And so you look at that and you say, 6 years later, here we are, about to replace them at Motown. Not only that, the woman who discovered Michael Jackson and Jackson 5, Suzanne DePass, is the one who's bringing us to Motown. We are about to sign the largest new artist contract Motown offered anybody. So on a Saturday afternoon, we are knowing the week coming up, we are going to sign that contract. My life is about to change forever. Fame and fortune, everything I could possibly dream of. 8 little Black kids in South Central LA, incredibly poor, who can barely pay a $90 a month rent, getting government assistance for food and having to go into the streets and look for bottles and stuff to redeem for a pound of ground beef and a bag of rice just to eat for the week. That was our life. And now here we are, about to do exactly what Michael Jackson predicted we would do if we kept going forward. I don't imagine he'd ever predicted we would be replacing him at Motown. So we know we're going to sign this contract at the end of the week coming up on Thursday or Friday. This Saturday, my sister screams upstairs, boys, come downstairs, family meeting. I'm thinking, this is it. We're about to learn we are about to have our lives changed for the better. I come downstairs and I go into the living room. My 3 youngest sisters are already in the living room. They're sitting on the couch, but they're at the far end of the couch. And they're not saying a word. Nothing. Which is incredibly odd because all they did was chatter. They laughed and joked. They teased everyone. It was constant. But they were huddled at the far end of the couch next to each other. And I'm thinking, that's odd. My 2 youngest brothers also sitting on the couch, and they're like me. They're scanning the room like, what's going on here? We are about to become rich. Our life is about to change. So they don't know what's going on. My oldest brother's standing at the far end of the couch next to my sister. He, like me, is like, what the hell? Do you guys realize what's about to happen? It was eerie. It was so strange me to just go into a room that should be nothing but jubilant, to be in a room that has all the energy has been sucked. And me and my brothers have no idea why. Now, my sisters do, because earlier that day, there was a lot of banging of doors in the house. You could hear them arguing with each other. It was like agitated bees all morning, just the buzz of activity. And they would go into a bathroom and huddle and like, why are all the girls running in the bathroom? What are they talking about? What's going on? Or they would go into someone's bedroom and you could hear their voices raising like, okay, what's going on? I'm about to find out. As I walk into the living room, my oldest sister, the third oldest, is pacing the walkway. She's mad. She is angry, which wasn't all that odd because she and my mom could be at each other a lot and I'm figuring, okay, this is just the regular, whatever it is they're doing. But why is everyone so? I then sit on the couch next to my two brothers, in between my sisters. My mother and stepfather come into the room. My stepfather goes and sits in this brown recliner. This brown recliner sat in the middle of the room. He immediately bent over and put his hands to his face. Okay. Something's wrong. Something's very. But he doesn't say anything. He just keeps his hand in his face. It's a look of shame. My mother, who's also very bubbly, very effortless, very just full of life, has this stoic look on her. But it's also a stoic look that has an energy of anger underneath it. You could just see it whole feet. She walks to the middle of the room and turns around. And then she looks at all 8 of her children. My older brother's still standing. 6 of us are still on the couch. And my oldest sister is still pacing the archway. You're a brother. You've got 4 younger sisters. The youngest are 2 twins. They're about 9 years old. My oldest sister is about 15. She's just 11 months older. And the most enjoyable moment of your life is about to happen, except it doesn't. Now, you probably know me well. California is known for our earthquakes. We have them all the time. Bridges break, foundations of homes crack, buildings collapse. It happens all the time. These are foundational material earthquakes. These things can be repaired. But when an emotional earthquake hits you, no matter how hard you work to put it back together, there are always remnants of the trauma from the earthquake. No matter how hard you work and how successful you are at healing, there's always something left over in your DNA. Always. It is a part of you now. Well, me and my 3 brothers are about to be hit with 3 emotional earthquakes in 10 minutes. My mother, as I said, looks at her 8 children, and she is about to say the word no brother could ever prepare for. The words no brother ever expects to hear. And before I go further, I think it's important to tell your audience what we are talking about can be very traumatizing. In fact, can be very triggering for some people listening, because we are talking about child sexual abuse. I suggest you always protect yourself. If you need to back away from this conversation, by all means, do so, because you will hear some things and may then experience some things emotionally, internally, that could be emotionally triggering for you. So just so you know, I encourage you to step back and come back to this conversation another time. My mother says your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. Did you see? No, what are you talking about? What are you saying? No, 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 no. This is not the conversation I'm expected to hear. But at this point, I just start to humble emotionally. I cannot believe what I'm hearing, but I'm trying to comprehend what she just said. I'm hearing liquor store. I'm hearing apartment. I'm hearing park, and I'm just trying to put it all together. What? Molesting who? No, no, can't be. We are too tight for all of this. This is not us. We are the perfect family, the perfect Black family. What are you talking about? We never had any of this stuff. But there it was. That was earthquake number one.
I have to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, I have to ask, when your mother said your stepfather molested your three sisters, did you understand what that meant?
No.
Or was that, because not like today, where you have like the conversation buzzing around or stuff going on the internet, information was more freely available.
No, no. It was so stunning. It was so sudden. You are about to hear the greatest news that you could possibly hear in your life, but then it is quickly replaced by this. And as you said, 1977 is almost 45 years ago. It's almost 50, in fact. This was not a conversation being had anywhere. Certainly not in the open. If you're a woman, you know all about this conversation, because historically, this is something that has been happening to you since the beginning of time. And apparently that's what my sisters were discussing all morning. We need to tell the boys today. I was dropped into PTSD so fast. The abyss, I was just dropping and dropping. And yet this wasn't the end of it. My mother then said, I have known all along. Wait. What part? No. What do you mean? You have known all along. It's been happening for years, and you allowed it to. No, this cannot be. This is other families go through this, not us. No, are you kidding? We are about to become famous. We are about to become wealthy. We are about to be out of poverty, and to learn that your sister have been sexually abused by your stepfather, and that your mother knew. Now, at the time, it was only mentioned that it was my two oldest. The youngest of the eight of us, the twins, I would learn 15 years ago. Not 15 years after, 15 years ago, in about 2011, 2000. The girls kept that a secret from their brothers. So that's emotional earthquake. We're battered. We don't know what to say, what to do. And then earthquake number 3 comes. My oldest sister, who had been pacing the archway, spins around and points a finger at her 4 brothers, her 4 innocent, who have absolutely no idea any of this has been going on. She says to us at that moment, "You boys can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You can't talk about it ever." And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so incredibly tight, so incredibly loving, lay on the living room floor, broken, shattered for good. 3 emotional earthquakes that no brother could ever prepare for. The first 2 were devastating. The third one, my sister said, her command is the one that really broke her, because your brother and the people you need to speak to the most, the people who can help you the most, just told you they want nothing to do with it. Your feelings, your emotions are cast to the side. They're shunted to the side. They don't matter, because when you are told as a brother, you can't talk about it. In fact, me and my brother didn't even talk to each other about it. That's how locked down we were. For decades, we never even mentioned it to each other. When the lockdown is so solid, it is so complete, where do we go? In 1977, you could go to any library, you could go to any bookstore and pick up all kinds of books and articles and magazines on women's story. And I only say that to say, because there's nothing out there for brothers, but that is a horrific statistic in and of itself. That you could readily available find all kinds of articles. You could go, you could see a movie, you could see a documentary, you could see an interview, you could, all these things were being for women, but nothing for brothers. Today, we are learning more and more celebrity men, be them athletes or entertainers, actors, singers, celebrity men talking about their direct molestations and rape as children. But when it comes to brothers, where do we go? There is absolutely nothing for us. Even today, there is no place for us to go. Now, I understand my sister was doing when she said we can't talk about it. She's got to protect herself. Of course, she's looking to protect her youngest sister. But from a brother's standpoint, whenever we hear it, be it in our family or outside our family, we are so emotionally traumatized that our abilities to deal with shame for not knowing, guilt for not knowing, there's this sense of betrayal. Even though the whole business of my father and my mother keeping it from us boys was designed to keep us in the dark, because we could eventually do something. And our sisters were presented with the threats of, if you tell your brothers, I will hurt, I may even kill them. And so that locked them down. So the question becomes for brothers, meanwhile, what do we do? Because even today, there are no movies, there are no documentaries, there are no articles, there are no books other than mine that looks at the needs and the trauma that brothers experience. There are 12-step programs for just about anything you can name on the planet. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, 12-step programs for how to improve your life, 12-step program, or how to turn a key in your car. I'm like, they're just everywhere. Step program. But for brothers, we are left out. And when we are told that we don't matter, and we're told that we can't talk about what we hear, is we don't matter. Our feelings don't matter. Our voices don't matter. Every conversation in the child sexual abuse space is being had, except for the one that involved brothers. It's as though we don't exist. And I certainly here in the United States, it is a societal construct by a number of groups. Obviously, men have our own culpability in this because we are, especially if we're Black men, we're always strong. We are always the hunters. We can handle anything. And so our vulnerability is not something that we are all in times willing to put on display. But I'm a firm believer that everyone has a male-female dynamic within them, and energy within them, which is why we're able to get to emotional places where we need to, and sometimes unexpected. Women are much better navigators of that yin-yang personality, yin-yang inner self. Men, we're not, because we are always told, no, you don't cry. You got to suck it up. You got to go forward. You just got to deal with it. You're going to be a man. Well, we are handcuffed in many ways emotionally. And for a brother, the people, as I said, we need to speak to the most, they've just said, get away. Part of the problem is to say that it didn't happen to us is not true. It has been happening to us. We just didn't know about it. The energy in the house was, our sisters being afraid, being molested, being raped and stuff, it was in the house. We'd go out and we would do shows. And I've come to learn my sisters were so afraid to do shows, whatever our stepdad could, the entire family performed, performed. And knowing that he would be on stage with them, and my sisters would say, I don't know what he's thinking about when I think, is hard to hear for a brother. There's just so much with this. I will say this, and I'm sure you got questions, and there's just a lot. My thing is to elevate the voice of the brothers. 6 years before my sister were sexually abused by our stepfather, and our sisters never knew them. My older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months. So I say that because oftentimes when I'm speaking, and I do a lot of speaking, women will instantly say, well, you know what? It happened to your sister. She's right. It didn't happen to you boys. You guys don't fully understand. Until I tell people, yes, I do, because I was sexually abused. And then that kind of brings me back to the conversation with women that say, oh, wait, I didn't know that. You do understand. So I understand both sides. I understand being the direct victim, what that's like. And I understand being the indirect victim. So the question becomes, how do brothers have a voice? Where's our space? Because certainly here in the United States, there are some 44 million people, adults, walking around who have been sexually abused. And when you're a brother, you cannot talk about it. Oftentimes, the type of man that you grow to become from a boy to a man is directly related or to the type of support you get or don't get. Your interactions with women, your interactions with sisters. And it took decades for me to find the proper relationship with my sisters and understand there were things that I could have, would have, and should have done afterward that I did not do. And so I carried this strong burden because I was told I couldn't do anything, told not to do anything. And yet I waited years before I finally just said, to hell with it, I'm doing something about it. But that 9 years or so for me is 9 years of betrayal. And brothers struggle to come up with that on ramp to the sisters, so you can drive up and say, look, I need to talk. I need to have something. I need to have some sort of communication to help you understand, but more importantly, to help me understand, because you start to lose your self-esteem as a brother. You begin to lose your self-worth. And mine became incredibly dark, incredibly dangerous, to the point that I almost killed myself. So brothers, and I've spoken to so many men, meanwhile, who said, you know what? I had to go through the same thing with my sisters, and I didn't know what to do about it. I I just keep quiet, and I don't know what to do. It is such a struggle for me knowing that my sisters were abused, and I cannot talk. I can't talk to anyone. There's nothing. I just have to hold it in. So, as I said before, I'm sure you have questions, and so you can ask me whatever you want to ask.
No, I have a number of questions and like a number of things percolating through my mind with like, yes, they're like very powerful story just told. Now, this is the thing. Like one of the things I need to get an idea of, like, yeah, okay, this like your stepfather, that this man who came into your family, like, is it possible to explain like what type of before this all went down, before you went from not knowing to knowing what, like, what was the type of person he was to you and say to other people who looked from the outside? Can you
Oh,
explain that, please?
from the outside, everything was absolutely perfect. He looked so much like us. He was 6'6", 250 pounds, had a massive afro. I mean, he handsome, intelligent, and so for people on the outside, it just it was just perfect. This family is absolutely perfect. But for me and my siblings, my sisters already were under attack. And so their view of him was one of fear. Their view of him, they were always under attack. And my mother would never step in to help. My three brothers, they tend to look up to him. My older brother in particular looked up to him because my older brother's point of view was, this guy comes into us, a very poor family, and he's helping us. He's got to be a great guy. Now me, I never did trust him. I did not have the kind of relationship that my siblings had with him, and certainly not my brother. He was very outgoing. He was very friendly. He was very playful, especially in public. But there was always this sense with me that something was out of. Now, my biological father, we lived in Portland, Oregon, was a piece of work. I watched him beat my mother for years. I watched him strip her down, chase her in the streets, trying to beat the crap out of her. And he was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. So my mother left in the middle of the night, so to speak, without him knowing about it, drove from Portland along with my aunt with her 8 kids down to California. And we were on the run all the time from my. So going from the fire into the frying pan was our gift after we left Portland. And this particular, our frying pan being my stepfather, Now, I am 5'8" at the time, 145 pounds. So he outweighed me by over 100 pounds. And yet I was the one who was really struggling with him around. Something was just, and once I learned what it was, the week that we were to side with Motown, it just looking back on it, like, yeah, well, that made sense. That's what I was sensing.
Yeah. No, like, oh, no, I understand. Like, this is the thing. Like, one of the things I struggle with regards to your story is the simple fact that, okay, your mother was complicit in the actions going on. Like, the whole sort of maternal instincts where, like, okay, look, like, most mothers, like, if you ask someone if they can kill or not be killed, like, ask a lady who becomes a mother, yeah, would you kill for your child? The answer more times than not will be yes, like that. But to let your sisters be, well, like, no, not even exposed, given this like piece of work, this monster by any other name, and to let him run free for that period of time. Like, have you ever asked why she did not like stop this? Why she did not protect your sisters to
Oh, of
keep up?
course we did. Of course we did. And
Huh?
her answer was always, he was the breadwinner. We needed his money. It was very difficult for us to stay in our, we grew up homeless. We grew up on the streets. We were constantly evicted from place to place. And so my mother's trying to, I guess in her mind, trying to at least keep a roof over her head. And the price for her doing that was sacrificing her daughter. And in fact, the price of her doing that also meant she would sacrifice me and my older brother, because with me and my older brother would be uh, abused by our babysitter. I told her months prior what was going on, and her response to me was, well, baby, and there's nothing I can do about it, right? So I think my stepfather, who at the time was living with us, saw that and realized, okay, if she won't protect her little boy, she's not going to
Green
protect
light.
her daughter. I'm going to have free reign here. So my mother, you're absolutely right, are complicit. Man, it didn't occur to me until a few days ago that I was living in a house with monsters. And to look at your mother that way, because you're absolutely right. You ask any woman, you ask any father, when they first lay eyes on their brand new child, when they're immediately born, and you look at that and it's nothing but there's this godlike experience, there's this grace, there's this divine energy, and you pick up your child and it's like, oh my goodness, I will protect you forever. I will walk through hell for you. I will never let harm come to you. You ask any parent, and that is usually some of the first things that come to their mind. You will always be loved. You will always be protected. I will let nothing harm you. And then to get to that place where you serve up your daughter. And man, we even had sex trafficking. She allowed, we were performing at the Playboy Club in Century City, and we could barely get there. Our car was just breaking down, but we managed to get there. There was this rich Arab guy who was in love with my 13-year-old. And my mother and stepfather decided to give him a night with my sister for a new van. It's like, what is going on here? What are you doing? So we had all sorts of stuff, and you're absolutely correct. You ask any woman, they're not letting that happen at all. They just aren't. And so in the immediate aftermath of the 10 minutes, my mother was able to whisk him out of the house without us kids being able to ask one question. He was gone. But 2 weeks later, she brought him. Some of the couple of my sisters had already left. They're like, I'm out of here. And this journey as a brother, mine, was just beginning. See, we were contractually bound. We owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to United Artists for the album that we did with it. And so we had to figure out a way to pay that money back. And so that forced some of us to continue to try to work together. And the question becomes, do you go back to the street or do you try to eat? And even as a brother, I can tell this story. And oftentimes the guys will say, yo, man, I would have done this. I would have done that. My sister's here, girl, I would have done this. If that happened to me, I would have done that. My response to that is, that's just noise. That is absolute noise. Because you have absolutely no idea what you will do in that situation as a kid. Granted, I'm 16 years old. And we are living in a life where everything is being controlled by my mother and stepfather. Every movement we make is being controlled by them. So you're not accustomed to just stepping into your space and owning who you are. It wasn't until 3 months before I got married that I actually found the courage to do something. And here I am, 3 years, this is 9 years later. And we would want to talk to our sister to think, we need to talk to you. Can you help us? But as I said, my oldest sister's demands were so complete. Me and my 3 brothers, we just stepped back. And there's this 9 years of betrayal and lack of being the brother, because at times we would hear that, how come, you're not seeing, how come you guys didn't see us crying? How come you guys didn't hear us, weeping and all this sort of stuff? Like, but you said we can't talk to you. You told us not to. And we honored that because we figured that's the way it's supposed to be. Because when women have been sexually abused, they will oftentimes tell men, you can't talk about it. You can't come to me. But they will talk to other women, and women control the narrative, and for good reason. Historically, what men have done for women when it comes to sexual abuse, there is no denying that women control the conversation. But what do you do when you are innocent and you are a brother and you're carrying so much trauma and guilt and shame? How do you manage? And it has been a decades-long struggle to try to manage. My book, I am so happy to say, has 3 of my sisters contribute to Helplessness. Because we're at that place where they actually contribute to the book. 2 of my brothers contribute to the book. So you get a full family view of helplessness, of what really happens. Helplessness is really dark. It's very gritty. It's very ugly. And as some people, you don't let us breathe. And I'm saying, no, I don't let you breathe. Because when you are a child sexual abuse victim, when do you get to breathe? You don't get to breathe. So if you want to fully understand what it's like and what a brother imagines his sister is going through, or his sister, Helplessness will give you all you need to know.
I know, I hear that. No, because like this is the thing. I'm now look, with regards to hearing this news and like yes, being in the the rock and the hard place of like uh well being under parental guidance, which let's just say a parent being generous, to say the least, and then basically being on the hook to the music company Universal for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, how long did, like you say, a couple of your sisters up to left? How long did you stay
How long did I stay where?
in the family unit? Did you leave immediately?
We kept going for years. We kept going for years. And let's see, it wasn't until 3 months before I got married in 1986. This is 9 years later that my emotional state over this was so bad. It was so dark because everyone said, okay, we got to keep this together. We can still make this work. We can still make this singing. We can still do this. We can still make it work. And everyone was like, okay. And we asked our sisters, you guys still want to do this? And they're like, yeah. So of course, if our sister said keep going, we boys kept going. If our sister said no, we were ready to stop. And so 3 months before my wedding, I was with my fiance, who's my wife. We've been married 38 years. And I told her, this was on a Friday, and I said, I have got to go to the house. There's something that I have to take care of. It has to be this week. Meanwhile, I was spiraling down because I could not imagine being in the house because my mother had brought him back again. She was dating him again. This constant betrayal. My mother is all about image. She's all about herself first. And at this time, every time she sees him, she's betraying all 8 of her children, not just her daughter. She's betraying all 8 of them. So 3 months before my wedding, I told my fiance, I got to go back to the house. I got to know.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. But it's worse than that. It's not it's not just betrayal of of her children. It's she's now making you complicit in what's gone on. So basically tainting you guys.
Yes and no. Yes and no. We are still following. We are still doing what our sisters want us to do. Our sisters are saying, okay, you guys got to keep going. You guys have to do this. So it was our sisters who orders we were following, whose direction, because they still want to eat. We still need some place to live. So I can easily see your thing that we are complicit, but if we're going to go there, even that is, all of us are now part of it. It's not just the boys, it's everyone. And when you're children, this is what you're trying to figure out, even as you go into adulthood. So, yeah. So 3 months before I was to get married, as I said, you may have some other questions. So, please.
Oh, no, because this is the whole thing. Look, it's like, your mother's making you complicit. It's not like, you were just told and went, off you go, sis. It's okay. No, mother puts you in this situation and then goes, right, he's out, he's back, he's in the house. and this is what we like, and you know what I mean? Through like parental pressure, like this is the way it's going to be. Like you're gonna have to keep this secret or else.
Oh,
And like
absolutely.
that or else. And you've mentioned like okay, you've mentioned being homeless 3 times. You mentioned like not being on government assistance, everything like this. And having that sword hanging over you, like basically forcing your brothers, your sisters into this situation where now you have to hold this line, making you guys complicit to
Absolutely.
what's gone on and not being able to actually say a thing, like say what's gone on.
Yeah,
Like
you are correct. Yeah.
I can only imagine the sort of like trauma, like the psychological burden that would have been on like yourself, your brothers, like you know what I mean, especially the 2 brothers who looked up to your father, like your stepfather, excuse me. And like look, on that level, it's like wow. And then basically like with your father, your biological father being the piece of work that he, as you said, a piece of work that he is, like drug addict, and like look, lifting up hands to your mother. It's not like you had this figure of a father which was gonna come in and rescue you all from your situation.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah,
You know,
uh,
this type of thing that we're talking about is it happens all over the world. It crosses racial line. It crosses religious line. It crosses education. It crosses wealth. It crosses political lines. It crosses borders. It crosses everything. Child sexual abuse happens everywhere. And oftentimes, certainly here in the United States, there's the greatest number of reported child sexual abuses are within the Black community, and we don't handle that conversation well at all. It is a conversation which, just in its very nature, is incredibly uncomfortable to have. But when you go to people who you know or expect to be able to help you, which some of us did, and they tell you, no, we can't help you, then that only compounds the trauma. As I said earlier, there are support systems and tools for just about anything. But in this case, there are none. And to your point about being complicit and in the way that you described it, I have to agree. Yeah, I have to agree. I hadn't looked at it like that before. So that's an interesting perspective, and I one that I believe to be spot on, because when you are forced into it, whether you like it or not, you become complicit. As I said, I hadn't looked at it like that. No one had ever presented it like that. So you are absolutely correct. And the the challenge once again for brother for me is, how do you reconcile? How do you heal from it? But more importantly, how do you reestablish some sort of relationship with your sister, knowing that they don't want to talk to you? Knowing for me, I was minutes away from murdering myself, which would have made the situation much worse. But in my mind, I was in such a dark place that I didn't even tell my fiance at the time what I was getting ready to do. I was just, this just has to be done now. I have failed them. I have betrayed them. I have not done what a brother's supposed to do. And for me, the pure definition of a brother for a sister is a brother protects his sister's honor, period. That's what it means to be a brother to a sister. And realizing that took me a lot. of time to figure out that's what was going on, because the barrier was always, you can't talk about it ever. The barrier was so incredibly impenetrable. As I said, we didn't even talk to each other, me and my brothers. We were so afraid to bring it up. So this this particular thing is, how do you, first of all, how do you figure out a way to heal from it? How do you get to a place with your sisters? In my situation, my sisters made it okay. They eventually made it okay for me to not only talk, but to write this book. It was an amazing situation that allowed me to express and write in tremendous detail, not only what happened, but what I envisioned happening to my sisters by my stepfather, and then to have one or two of them read it in the book and said, "You got that exactly right. That's exactly what happened." And I'm thinking, "But you never told me that." He said, "But that is exactly what you happened. What you described him doing to me in the closet, him doing to me in the bedroom, is exactly what happened." Because as a brother, it's easy to put ourselves in that situation and see our sisters being abused. And if you're carrying these images for years, and all it takes and all it took was to see a scene in a movie, hear a lyric in a song, and you're instantly transported back to all of it. It's easy to imagine what is happening. So my sisters created a situation that allowed me to become a brother, to become the man that I was supposed to be for them.
Like, this is the thing. I hear you. And like this, like the whole thing is, I think in many respects, the reason why we're plotting your like stepfather's murder in many respects came down to that was most probably the only thing you can like felt like you can control at that moment in time.
Absolutely.
Because like, yeah, if I take this man's life, if I like perform this whatever act of violence which went through your mind, like whatever dark like machinations, that was the only thing you could control at that period of time. And like the healing only began when, okay, yes, you could like, it wasn't so much opening up. Maybe it was a case of you got like getting permission from like, yeah, your sisters to start having like those conversations to help like sort of like get a little bit of control out there. That little bit like a seed, like it grew, like grows and grows and grows at each and every day. I look at your LinkedIn profile and like, yeah, one of the things I've noticed about it, it says founder CEO for many a different thing. The reason why I imagine is because, yeah, you have control, like being a founder, being a CEO, you have control over all aspects. Whereas like for many years, you were controlled, you had no control, you had no, like to say like power in this context is not the right word. I would say you were powerless in the realm of you could not take action into helping you move on to the next stage of healing for yourself and like your other sibling along the way. And with that sort of silence, what went on for many years, the pain, the trauma, and the divides just simply grew. Like you tell me, I'm just listening to your story. I just, you know what I mean? You're talking. I might be 100% wrong. You tell me.
I don't know about the controls for the companies that I have created and pursued. I have always been, even as a little boy, ambitious. Even as we were going through all of that, I always envisioned myself being someone important who could leave a legacy that was generational. So I have just I was always that type of kid, even when I was little. And I always dreamt of with having company, whether or not or how much of that was impacted by my lack of control and being controlled by other people I don't know. I can certainly see where that could definitely play a part um, of it. But I've just always been that way. But you're absolutely correct. When you are a kid, and the most important people that you know on the planet, it's not the president, it's not your minister, it's not your teacher. The most important, most powerful people on the planet to you are your parents. And when they are the ones betraying you, there's such a loss of direction and hope, where you can go, what you could actually do. And you have a hard time imagining things being better. And that's one of the things that was very prevalent to me. It was difficult for me to imagine a few things: a life where my sisters were actually involved, a life where I could actually be proud of who I am as a brother and as a man, and certainly now as father. It's just difficult to imagine that when you are filled with so much PTSD trauma. You know, often the big conversation these days is about mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health. For me, this is not a mental health issue. In fact, I think for me, most situations are not mental health. I think for most situations are emotional. Mental health is something that looks at the individual. You are alone. The problem is yours. It's singular. You are talking about isolating someone. You're talking about logic. That's what you're talking about. Let me write a prescription for you. Let me send you to therapy. Let me send you, because the rest of us are all right. Problem is yours, which is so much BS. The issue for me, and why I say it's the emotional health trauma brothers experience after we learn what happened, is because the emotions are what you're dealing with. That's how you get to betrayal and shame and guilt. Those are not logical things. Those are emotional. And when you're able to step out and talk about this and own your space so that the healing can take place and you're having conversation, then the shackles begin to fall away, which is what they did for me. Emotional health speaks of shared experience. Emotional health speaks of feelings. It speaks of inclusion, because you have to bring other people into the conversation to help you heal. You cannot go forward with emotional trauma unless you're able to come outside of yourself and speak to someone who will not judge you, someone who will allow you to be who you need to be emotionally, especially if you're a man, to allow you to be vulnerable. This is not a mental health situation. This is an emotional trauma that brothers experience. And so what we need going forward, and one of the things that I recommend, is that you have to get to a place where you can talk to someone, and it has to be someone or multiple people, whatever your setting is, that will allow you to just share and not judge you, just let you talk, because you have to bring this stuff out. It is eating away. I had said earlier that this becomes part of your DNA. It becomes part of your essence. And like DNA, which is self-replicating, this stuff can self-replicate in ways you have no idea. It can impact your relationship with women, and you're starting to figure out, why am I like, why do I view the situation like this? It can impact the way you approach your job. It could impact the way you approach your children, because that's what was happening to me until I finally figured out a few years ago what was going on. Whenever I was saying my son's name and I saw the last name of my stepfather, at the time we were still using that last name, and I was getting angry at my son. He's 4 years old. He has absolutely no idea. But it was the name associate it. The name that was associated with him when I see his name on some medical report. And it took me so long to figure out this is emotional pain. The emotional trauma is what's happening here. It is not mental, it's emotional. And once you can get to a place where you can talk, you've got to be able to accept that you are or have been a victim. If you cannot accept that, chances of healing is very low. Men, especially Black men, can have such a hard time admitting that we've been hurt. We are vulnerable, that we are not perfect, that we are not super strong, that we are not Superman. Even though society wants to put us there, we have these vulnerable sides and we need to express them, especially when we are in pain. So you've got to get there. You have to talk to people. And this is what I know. Men and women want the same thing we are. We all want to be understood. We all want to be heard. We all want to be seen. And we all want to go forward positively in a life that is so full of richness and joy. But if you're carrying a lot of trauma, it's very difficult to do so. So if you're a man or a woman, boy or girl, victim or survivor, I understand both sides of this coin. Direct victim, indirect victim. I understand both sides very well. It's not something that I'm proud of, but it is what it is. And my job is to elevate the voices of brothers. That's what my book is about. Because I began to realize I did not want my family story to end in tragedy. It's a horrible story, but it can be used to educate and to help. And now I have amazing relationships with 3 of my sisters. It's absolutely spectacular. But it took a lot of hard work to do that. It took me having to overcome a lot of fear to even approach. That's the only way you can go forward.
No, but like, this is the thing. That's the important thing. Like, as long as your siblings are still around, as long as you're like, as long as your like sibling kids and everything like that are still around and everything like this, the story's not over yet. By all means, you've had like a incredibly dark chapters which have like affected your family along the way. And like, over the course of time, like learn to heal, and you've managed to overcome so many things. And
it is a story of triumph. It is a story of hope. It is a story of resilience, you know. And as I said earlier, my sisters contribute to the book. They are contributing to the next 2 books. And so who would have imagined that was even possible 50 years ago?
Absolutely. No, but that was then. And like, yes, over the course of time, you've healed, you've grown. And now the whole thing is, you can, like, with this learned experience from yourself, your siblings, everything like this, you can help educate your sons better. Now, with regards to like Black men in general, learn, like, sort of open up and being vulnerable, that like, some people go, yes, you should go to therapy. Some people say you should do counseling. And like, I take the approach of most guys, the vast majority of guys, they need to be in a group of other guys where they go through like the day to day, have a laugh, do this, like horse around, everything like this. Because through all of that, eventually that sort of veil, it drops away. And that's when the real conversations happen.
Because you learn in that situation, you are not alone. And it's real important to know that you are not alone. And so, yeah, the group dynamic is such a fantastic support, brother.
Yeah. Because like this is the thing, like men in general, the sort of mindset which is trying to be indoctrinated into them. You have to be a stoic individual. And even more so these days. Whereas yeah, where if this was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, like, yeah, by all means be stoic, but you're still part of a community. You're still part of a like collective. Now it's a case of you are stoic, but you are the individual. And that means you're by yourself. And the only times you will open up, especially if it's a realm of vulnerability, is when the wheels truly come off and you cannot hold that water no more. And that's the only time it's allowed to come out. And then whoever that is has that fear of now they seem weak to your fellow man, like ladies around you and everything like this. I'm a
Absolutely.
weaker person in that
Absolutely.
society. So it's a tricky thing.
You're absolutely correct. Women are so much better at that than we are. And they are more willing to embrace and have those conversations. And even with that, I think that is so much driven by societal construct. Well, you're emotional. You can't be in this conversation when you're vulnerable. And so it always seems to me that they've always been able to gravitate and support each other. Whereas men, that is freaking hard to do because of what is expected of us. And then you start to get into the realm of toxic masculinity and all these sort of things. But I absolutely agree with you. The vulnerabilities for men around things like this are much better served when you're able to have a group dynamic, which then leads to the thing, creating tools and systems for men to have these conversations. Like I said, this is a topic that's very difficult to have. It's not just your typical 12 step, but I'm in complete agreement that creating a system and counseling or however it needs to be done, which is, I'm really hopeful that I can be the one to create these things, will serve everyone because the trauma becomes generational. It's not just the grandfather who's experienced it or the father. You have to be very mindful of that. I will tell you a quick story. My wife, she's white and she's Jewish. Right? She grew up from a middle-class family. I'm black. I'm poor. Middle-class family. You know my background, schooling, the places that I lived. My wife's family was stable. My father-in-law, he and I became very, very close. In many ways, he was the example of what a father should be for me, which he didn't have to do much other than not beat his wife or rape his daughters. He was pretty much on easy street, but he was just a spectacular guy. He passed away about 5 years ago, but before he passed away, he read he asked me to come to the house. He wanted to talk to me after reading it. I'm like, okay, I always called him dad. I always wanted to call my father-in-law, whoever it was going to be, dad. I just always liked him. He very well could be, going back to what you said earlier, something to the effect was so much control was taken away and not having that type of male in my family for me. I always look forward to being able to call, hopefully my father-in-law dad, and we became that close. But he called me to the house. When I got there, my mother-in-law was not, which was odd because she was always, mom is always around there, but she wasn't there. He's sitting at the dining room table. He said, have a seat. I got to tell you something. I said, okay, Dad. He picked up the book. I just finished it. I said, you read it? You read the whole thing? He said, yeah. Wow. I think you would read it because you know what it's about. Yeah, I read it. This is what I got to tell you. I understand what you're going through. Well, what do you mean? Was Myers. He said, I'm going to tell you something I have never told anyone but my wife. Okay. This guy is very well off. He's white. He's Jewish. And he's about to tell his black son-in-law who grew up poor something he's never told anyone. I sat back, okay. When I was a teenager, we lived in an apartment. We were on the first floor. There was a guy on the second story who we saw all the time. We were very friendly with him. Like, okay. He said, one day I went upstairs. My mom had sent me upstairs to get something from him, and the door was unlocked. And I went in. I'm getting very nervous at the point. Meanwhile, I'm like, all right, what's coming? He said, when I went into the house, he was molesting my sister. Yeah. He said, I am telling you this because I want you to know I understand. And I'm telling you this because of what you wrote. It is giving me the confidence to finally say something about it. He is in his 90s when he's telling me. He's in his 90s and he's still carrying all this guilt and shame and trauma. And he said, I didn't do anything. He said, here's the other thing. It happened again to my sister. And I just looked at him. I said, are you okay? He said, no. Finally telling someone and being able to share with you helped a lot. Because I have been carrying this dark secret my entire life. This is something, as I said, there are no racial bounds. There are no wealth bounds. There are no educational bounds to this. Religion, politics, all of it goes out the window. This is a global epidemic. It happens everywhere. And certainly here in the United States, every day there are 160 child sexual abuse incidents reported. Every day in the United States. Those are the ones that are reported. So last night, some little kid went to bed. They had a great day at school. They were playing hopscotch. They were playing softball. They were running through the yards at school, just having a good time with all their friends. 160 of them, someone walked in their bedroom in the middle of the night and molested them. It will happen again tonight. And it will happen again tomorrow night. And it will happen to every moral act. Because the conversation needs to be had. We need to bring everyone in the family into the conversation. If you leave out one group, the brothers, the entire family can never heal. That's just here in the United States. And in the United States, it has been reported that at least 500,000 children a year are sexually first-time abusers. And for many, they have nowhere to go. And so my thing is, I have got to bring brothers into the conversation so we can learn. We've got to bring sisters into the conversation so that we can become allies instead of enemies. And so that we can do what's necessary to heal those relationships because the trauma is so great. I carry a lot. I carry a tremendous amount. I can do this. This is my way of, this is my mission.
And like, this is the thing. Like, yeah, you carry a lot, but you got to understand you don't carry it alone. And like, you know what I mean? Because there are people out there who, like, yes, who have gone like through either similar circumstances with what you've gone through. A father-in-law to be like, as an example. And there are people who have not gone through that, but they are there to basically fight the good fight against. And like, until, like, I would say, until society, like, wherever aspect of society that there is, starts looking into the mirror of truth. And like the whole thing with the mirror of truth for me, like the mirror of truth shows you the good, the beautiful things about who you are and like everything like this, who society is. But the truth, like the ugly side of truth, which people don't want to look at, don't want to acknowledge, is also there as well. And there are times you don't, like, the longer you leave it, you don't look at that ugly truth, the harder it becomes. It becomes more and more unbearable to look at. So that nothing can be done. Well, nothing will be done because that something what happens over there. That's not what we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
And like the whole thing is like over here, in the UK, there was, it was, I believe it was in Rochdale. There was like there was at one part, like there was one particular part of the community preying on another part of the community. Like it was like they were going Asian men, like preying on white girls. And because like these girls didn't come from like say a middle class or upper middle class background, everything like this, they were looked upon as lower. So whatever happened to them,
Right.
it happened. And you know what I mean? So there was scores of like ladies which this went down with, and you're like going, right, that's brothers, like fathers who were left helpless, not knowing what the hell happened until it was too
Mhm.
late. And like with regards to like, yeah, like the black community over in the States, the black community here, like the difficult conversations will have to be had across many different lines to like so-called make things better. And I don't know how like people are going to get to these conversations, but people like yourself putting your stories into print and like, yeah, writing, talking to so many people, like doing all the podcasts you're doing to get that word out, it's a start. And over the course of time, I'm not too sure how that's going to come.